Welcome to the United States Capitol. It's a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to work here. Here's why. Workers may be fired without cause and with no hope of appeal. Workers are hired with no regard for equal opportunity or anti-discrimination laws. Workers' salaries have absolutely no pattern or plan. A member of Congress can pay you as much as $50,000 a year, or he can pay you nothing. A member can demand that you not only make coffee or do laundry, but as in one infamous case, order you to unplug their stopped-up toilet at 3 in the morning.
I can't think of any better way to say it than it's the last plantation. I mean, they have absolutely no protection that other employees have on the outside in the private sector or in the administration or in any of the executive agencies. They are not covered under the '64 Civil Rights Act. They're not covered under the Equal Pay for Equal Work. They're not covered under EEOC. They're not covered under sexual harassment provisions that we put on the executive branch. They're not covered under any of that. Young women come in here, very ideological, or blacks or handicapped or what have you, and they run up against some very ugly form of discrimination in some form. They tend to come to me or some other woman or black or someone they can relate to and say, "This is awful. What can we do about it?" And you say, the reality is, unfortunately, nothing.
In short, every law, every regulation that Congress has ever passed governing any employer or any employee comes to a screeching halt right here at the bottom of Capitol Hill. How did they get away with it? Simple. It all started here in the British Parliament back in 1689. The Stuart and House of Orange rivals for the British throne had a nasty habit. Each time a member of Parliament denounced either family, the member was quickly dragged out and beheaded. Needless to say, the practice had a certain quieting effect on parliamentary speeches. So they passed a law that nothing said in Parliament could be held against them outside the building. It was called the Speech or Debate Clause, and the founding fathers of our country, all of them white, male, and property owners, incorporated that law into their new Constitution without a word of debate. So here we are. Anything that happens here, anything that is said here cannot be criticized by any other body. Congress must not endure interference with its legislative endeavors. In 1974, a female aide to former Congressman Otto Passman of Louisiana was fired because he admitted he wanted to replace her with a man. After years of appeals, the Supreme Court finally ruled that Capitol Hill employees may sue for damages, but they cannot challenge a congressman's right to choose employees for any criteria, including sex. Speaking of sex, in 1975, it was discovered that Congressman Wayne Hayes had given Elizabeth Ray a job in his office, a job which had absolutely nothing to do with her typing ability. Well, the resulting scandal forced the House finally to do something about fair employment. Here's what they did. This is an invitation sent to all new House members. It invites them to sign an agreement promising to follow all the fair employment rules. Well, the bill providing this invitation was passed back in 1976. But the committee it's set up is less than effective. Its membership is all voluntary, and few Capitol Hill workers are covered under its rather fragile protections.
It's probably the most informal operation in Congress. It has an unlisted telephone number, no office, and only about a quarter of the members of Congress have signed the agreement. So that if you're an employee who wants to even ask a question or file a complaint or whatever, you simply don't know where it is. It's more secret than the Underground Railroad.
I've served on it now for 3 years, and nobody's brought a grievance to us. So it's either an indication that people are still afraid to subject themselves to this process and subject their boss to this process because the process is only voluntary. The boss doesn't have to agree to what the decision is, and the boss could fire the person just for filing the grievance. It's either an indication that that's the case, or I prefer to think that it's an indication that the members of Congress who would subject themselves to this, who would voluntarily agree to be part of this, and I guess there are about 110 of us when last I checked, are ones who would not treat their employees unfairly.
Now, over here on the Senate side, even that minimal protection is absent. Not that it hasn't been tried before. Back in October of 1978, former Senator Ed Brooke of Massachusetts stood on the Senate floor to add a surprise amendment to the Humphrey Hawkins full employment bill. That amendment, a full Bill of Rights for each and every Senate employee. Well, the opposition rose just as quickly, and with as little political bloodshed as possible, former Senator Brooke's amendment was buried under an avalanche of technicalities. It never rose again, and for that matter, neither did Senator Ed Brooke. Perhaps the low end of the Capitol Hill employment ladder is occupied by the blue-collar workers. Stuart Smith has been trying for years to get them organized. Many have agreed, but the Congress has consistently refused to recognize that organization.
They talk to me about arbitrary and capricious rules and regulations and the sort of complaints that you find in many workplaces. However, their basic grievance is the fact that they're not treated like human beings in the sense that they don't have the rights that workers in every place else have. That probably is their biggest grievance.
Well, if the Congress doesn't approve, if they don't go along with your organization, would they strike?
We will, of course, not talk about tactics in advance of what we have to do.
You want to know how bad the situation is? Here's how bad the situation is. Nobody anywhere can tell you how many people work here on Capitol Hill. Now, according to a variety of tallying methods, the number is somewhere between 18 and 40,000 people. Now, that's people who work for the members or their committees or the Library of Congress or the government printing office or the architects of the Capitol or the sergeants at arms of either chamber. Somewhere between 18 and 40,000 people. That's how bad the situation is. Finally, is there any hope that 20th century employer enlightenment will soon brighten the halls of the United States Congress?
No. Absolutely no.
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 Nope, not anytime soon. Jackson Bain, Metromedia News.